Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Broxtowe series, 10 parishes with an industrial past running along the western fringe of Nottinghamshire. Where are we today, viewers? Welcome back to Broxtowe in Nottinghamshire, everybody, and to another place that's got more than a few steep gradients, just like Castle had last week. This has a lot of railway history. This is Awsworth. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Welcome back to Broxtowe, folks, and this week we're having a look at Awsworth, located on the edge of the Erewash Valley. It lies on the edge of the Greater Nottingham area between the towns of Kimberley and Ilkeston, and it's been a civil parish since 1894. According to tradition, the martyr Anne Ayscough spent part of her early life at Awsworth, but her story belongs more to the nearby parish of Nuthall, where her father was lord of the manor. The village was likely founded by the Saxons under the name Ealdeswyrthe, but remained a small rural settlement until the 17th century, when it became involved in the glassmaking industry. A century later, coal mines began to be sunk and the population increased dramatically. There's a tale we're used to hearing by now. In the 1800s, most workers here were employed in the collieries, ironworks or in brickyards. The rest of the parish was prime grazing land and remained that way until World War I. Awsworth is a village that's grown more and more as time has gone on. Big housing estates to the west of the village were built from the 1960s onwards, and new homes continue to be added here and there. Its biggest historical landmarks centre around the railways. There were 2 viaducts here until 1973. Only one now remains, Beneley Viaduct, known as the Iron Giant of the Erewash Valley. Let's go and have a look at it, shall we? Awsworth has more than a bit of railway history. Our start point is the A6096 Shiloh Way, where a railway line once ran. There may be no lines left now, but at one time the Great Northern Railway's Derbyshire extension ran through this very area. Awsworth had 2 viaducts, Giltbrook Viaduct, which crossed Giltbrook Valley, and Beneley Viaduct, which crossed the Erewash Valley. Giltbrook Viaduct no longer stands, but Beneley Viaduct still very much does. It even has its own viewpoint. Completed in 1877, its engineer was Samuel Abbott, who worked under the chief engineer of the Great Northern Railway, Richard Johnson. It was originally called the Ilkeston Viaduct. It's 60 feet high, 26 feet wide, and over a quarter of a mile long. It was once part of a chain of bridges and embankments carrying the railway for around 2 miles across the valley. The line closed in 1968, leaving the bridge behind. The only other similarly surviving bridge in the UK is Meldon Viaduct in Devon. Beneley Viaduct is now a footway and cycleway and goes by a catchy nickname, the Iron Giant of the Erewash Valley. Well, to call this the Iron Giant is absolutely right, because it is an absolute monolith, this thing, Bentley Viaduct. It's well worth coming to see, and this viewpoint gives you literally the best view of it. And this information board that goes with it is very, very useful to tell you the story of the railway and how the viaduct was constructed. And here on this side, it also mentions the Nottingham Canal, because the railway line had to cross the canal. And if you're stood here, the canal is right behind you. Here it is. Here's the Nottingham Canal. And this these days is Awsworth Fishery. So what happened to the other viaduct? Well, just before Bentley Viaduct there was a junction where the Great Northern Railway ran north towards Pinxton. This branch line crossed the Giltbrook Viaduct, almost half a mile in length, which spanned the valley of the same name. It was known variously as Awsworth Viaduct or Kimberley Viaduct, but commonly locals referred to it as the 40 Bridges. The exact number of arches and girder spans was 43. The viaduct was S-shaped and built in 4 sections. Like Bentley, it too stood 60 feet high. Rather unusually, there were some houses which were built into 2 of the arches. They were used as makeshift air raid shelters by school children from Awsworth during a German bombing raid, which dropped bombs at Bentley Junction. This bombing raid was part of what became known as the Great Midlands Raid. Giltbrook Viaduct was demolished in 1973 to make way for the A610 bypass. So after following the canal towpath for a while, we're now on Newton's Lane and we've crossed the parish boundary into Cossall. Since 1977, Broxtowe Borough Council has maintained the upstream sections of the canal as a nature reserve and walking trail. We're now onto the eastern portion of Newton's Lane, which was split in half when Shiloh Way, a bypass, was built. It seems that the already large village we're about to walk through is going to be gaining a few more houses down here soon. This is halfway up Newton's Lane, a steep hill which runs towards The Lane, Awsworth's main thoroughfare. We're still within Cossall's boundaries here. This southern section of the village is bisected by the border. Once on the glebe though, we cross back into Awsworth again, into a densely populated area built mainly since the 1960s. A lot of these suburban-like streets are linked together by a network of alleyways, like this one leading to Barlow Drive South. This northwestern end of Awsworth is its more modern part. The older areas are more towards the south and east. So it's fair to say that this western portion of Awsworth is very residential. It's a bit of a rat maze as well, because as you can see, there's plenty of these little paths that lead between these houses. I tell you what though, if you live here, you ain't half got a brilliant view into the Erewash Valley. How about that? The housing estate continues for what seems like an eternity. Mind you, it does have a few nice trees here and there. On Lawrence Avenue is a row of shops, including a bar named 40 Bridges, that pays homage to the former Giltbrook Viaduct. After the shops, the estate comes to an end at Bonners Road. On the southern side of that, there are older terrace streets. From Bonners Road you can see the local school, or at least the back of it. This is Awsworth Primary and Nursery School. This began life in 2002 when the former infant and junior schools were amalgamated. In 2018 it then became an academy. Via the terraced houses to the south it's time to head for the lane along Stamford Street and Middleton Street. They bring us to an old off-licence which the owner of the website Ilkcam suspects was also a bakery at one time. However, he goes on to say that it could have been this, a Chinese takeaway on the other side of Middleton Street. You can catch a bus here. Awsworth is served by the number 27, which connects the towns of Kimberley and Ilkeston. Next is the former United Free Methodist Church, which opened in 1884. This has changed very little since its construction. The road then passes the front entrance of the school as we make our way towards the Lane Recreation Ground. This is Awsworth's main leisure area, and it features the village hall, the youth club and a massive playground to the rear. So let's see what we've got on this recreation ground then. First thing I've noticed is this skate park right here. Now this has got a little plaque about it, and it says Awsworth Skate Park refurbishment was funded and delivered by Nottinghamshire County Council in 2013. Well, I think they've done a good job of it, quite frankly. That's quite nice. Beyond that, you've got a little playground, all the usual play equipment over there. There's a basketball court to the left, to the right here, I should say, and then the hedge you can see beyond this, that I believe is a bowling green. I'm just going to put the camera over the top and see if it is indeed a bowling green. Well, it looks like one to me, so yeah, I'd say that is indeed a bowling green. And then beyond that, of course, you've got obviously the playing field. I think there might even be a football pitch or two down there, and then around the back of all of that, you've got the Awsworth Youth and Community Centre, which is this building right here, and that is also where the village hall is, and that's the next thing to talk about. The well-used Awsworth Village Hall can boast a fully licensed bar and kitchen, and it has a free car park for 38 vehicles. There's a few niceties in its grounds, like this tree which was planted to commemorate the Diamond Jubilee of our late Queen. We've seen the current school, now how about the old ones? Just up the road is a former infant school built in 1895. It could accommodate 216 students at full capacity, and it's now a day nursery. There's a second school not too far away. We've now hit the absolute summit of the hill Awsworth stands on, marked by the location of a Nisa supermarket. Just past that is the other school. This has the words Awsworth Board School above its entrance and a date stone of 1878. Over the road is the parish church. This is a brick church dedicated to St Peter and is one of the more modern in Broxtowe. Awsworth had no church until 1746, or none that have ever been recorded. Only the chancel from that original building remains. The nave was rebuilt in 1903 by Naylor and Sale of Derby in a Gothic style. Plans did exist for a tower, but it was never built. In 1920, a war memorial was added in the churchyard, unveiled by the son of the Reverend Michael Terry, once the vicar of Awsworth. The lane has now become Main Street, and we're beginning to drop downhill again. I think it's time we found a pub. Right, just off Main Street you've got Croft Crescent, and that's where we find a pub called the Crown Inn, and this will begin what is the last section of this walk around Awsworth as we head back to the start. This will obviously capture the pub and a few other bits and bobs, including a recreation ground, and we'll talk a bit about Awsworth Station as well. Formerly a home ales pub, the Crown Inn was the scene of a number of coroner's inquests into fatalities at Castle Colliery. Uniquely, it also features a skittle alley housed in a separate room to the rear of the main two-roomed building. Croft Crescent brings you to Station Road. Awsworth Station was on the GNR's Derbyshire extension that we discussed earlier. In operation between 1880 and 1964, only the old station house and the name of Station Road offer any clue to its existence. I can at least show you the general area where it was located. Off Station Road and down a slope is Atwell Road. At the bottom there's a path which used to be the railway line. There's a parish notice board too, so I left a card right here. This is the Shiloh Recreation Ground, which used to be a rail yard. The main line was on one side and a siding ran along the other. Awsworth Villa Football Club play here. Football in the village dates back to 1935, but Awsworth Villa were founded in 1963. In 1985 they moved to the Shiloh after the ground was donated to Awsworth Parish Council, who in turn leased the ground to them. This footpath from the Shiloh is the route of the main line, which from here crossed Benley Viaduct on its way into Derbyshire. And we're back to the start. 1 hour and 17 minutes of hills and hollows. That is basically Awsworth. Let me show you the Strava elevation graph. I don't know whether you can see this, but look how much of a hill I've had to climb up. This first one here, this flat part, that's alongside the Nottingham Canal, but then after that, up and down, up and down. Blimey, if you come to Awsworth, you've got to be prepared for the hills. But to be honest with you, seeing as I have now sort of exhausted myself a little bit and got the blood pumping, it's actually a good thing, because the next one is going to be quite a challenge. It's going to be a lengthy route because it's the first of the towns here in Broxtowe. I'll see you there next week. And that'll do us for Awsworth, folks. My last task was to drive up Main Street and the lane towards the next one, although I was soon to find out this was the wrong thing to do. Join me next week to discover why as we take on one of Broxtowe's biggest settlements. I'll see you there in 7 days' time. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.